lure fishing. I guess you think you caught me fishing and I shouldn't be. I've been very lucky in my life in that I've lure fished in a lot of countries around the world, and I seldom travel without a travel lure rod, spinning rod, and a reel and a box of lures in my luggage. So there's always somewhere where you can go and chuck a line, and so I have, and I've done that all around the world. Caught some interesting fish and had some interesting blanks as well, but hey, that's fishing. Right, for quite a few years now I've been involved lure fishing. In the last 10 mostly from the boat, but I'm going to get back into casting lures this year, see if I can catch myself some bass. So I've got a few bits of kit. I've tried this reel out. This is a Therein Ninja 4000J, which I used out in the Caribbean this year, and it worked very well for me. The other thing that I'm going to start using for the first time ever for lure fishing is I'm going to be using sort of gel spun line, a braid line. Now I tried using a very narrow braid called whiplash out in the Caribbean, and what I found was, because it was such a light line, I was getting a lot of wind knots with it, and I ended up sort of losing quite a bit of line. I mean, they cut off quite long lengths of it each time. And so what I'm now going to try is I'm going to try some of this Berkeley Nano Fill, which allegedly is designed exactly for that, for casting lures, and it's kind of a crossover between a monoline and a braid. It's quite a fused braid, so it's got all the benefits of a monofill, but without any of the stretch, and so that's what I'm going to be using. You can see I've already got backing onto this spool, so we're not going to be putting a whole spool of this on each time. So if it does fluff up and I have to cut off a length of it, then I've still got plenty left on the spool, because it's not cheap, this stuff. This is £30 for a little tiny spool. This is 270 metres, which should be enough for a couple of fills, I would think, on this reel. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be using a device that in theory, when this goes onto the spool, it takes the twist out of the line, because that's one of the problems with braid, particularly when you're casting repeatedly with lures, is each time you cast, you're going to be putting a little bit of twist into the line. You get a lot of twist in the line, which actually makes the problem with wind knots increase. So we'll have a look at that, and I'm going to wet this line before I put it onto the spool so it lays better, because that's another thing that I've read that says that removes some of the risk of wind knots. Okay. Right, so if you're thinking about getting into lure fishing, and it's something you haven't done before, I would suggest that there's a couple of knots that you need to add to your repertoire of knot tying. It depends if you're going to use braid tied to a fluorocarbon leader or not. If you're just tying, if you're using monofill line and you're tying it straight to the lure, you don't need to use this knot. But I've certainly gone over to braid now, and I'm using fluorocarbon leaders. So I need to have a knot that will connect the braid to this leader. Now ordinary leader knots that you use for beach casting, etc., they'll work, but it does make a rather bulky knot that will catch on the rings as it's passing through. So the knot I'm suggesting you use is an FG knot. Now the FG knot, I've had some mixed experiences of an FG knot. You have to be very careful how you tie it, and I would suggest, and the way I'm going to do it and the way I do it now, is that I'm going to use a little bit of rig glue as well, just to make sure it all stays locked down and doesn't loosen off. That's normally because I'm quite lazy and I don't like having to retie knots constantly. So we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so here we go. We're going to tie ourselves an FG knot. Now I've done a bit of research in this, and I've been practicing various ways of tying this knot, and I came up with a way that I quite like. Now, of course, this is the way I like. You could go onto YouTube and you could do a bit of investigation, and you might find a way that you prefer. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using 40-pound grease weasel. Now, that's not the leader that I would be using if I was lure fishing. It's far too bright, it's too thick, but I'm using it so it's a bit easier to see on the video. And the main line I'm using is 20-pound whiplash. Again, I probably wouldn't be using that on my when I'm spinning, but I'm using it because it's in contrast to the grease weasel, so we can just get a better idea of what we're doing. First thing you need is that you need to get hold of your leader. Let's get rid of all these loose tangly bits. We don't want it ropes all over the place. Tighten it up a bit. We're going to hold that between our thumb and forefinger, so you've got about 3 inches projecting. Okay. Then you're going to get your main line, the braid, and you want about, I don't know, 10 to 14 inches tag end. And you're going to hold that between your thumb and forefinger so they cross over. Okay, and we're going to maintain that cross. Now, the beauty of this way of doing it is that you don't need to have something leaning against the line to keep tension on. We can tie this without any tension on the line, which means that in theory you could do this when you're out on a boat, or you could do it when you're on a beach or something like that. You don't have to be leaning rods up against things and what have you. So we're going to put 20 loops. Alright, so we're going to start off with the line that would be going off to the end of your rod, and we're going to go underneath and pull it into the palm of your hand, tug it into the tight part of your finger, and then over the top and pull it back along your finger there like that. Then you're going to take the tag end and you can do the same thing, underneath, so it's along your finger, and then over the top, so it's into the palm of your hand. We're going to keep on doing this for another 18 times. So underneath, pull it into the palm of your hand, give it a little tug, yeah, and then over the top, pull it back along the finger. Okay, keep it trapped between the forefinger and thumb. Okay, and then tag end underneath, along the finger, over the top, into the palm of the hand. So now that's 3 times. Underneath 4 times. $19. Last one. $20. And then we want to hold these 2 lines together, and we're going to do 2 half hitches around both lines. So once, cinch that down, and then cinch that down. Any loose little loops and what have you. So it's probably best to get both of these pulled up against that. And there you can see it already. We've got a nice little, very tight knot there. We're going to do a bit more cinching to get around any little slack loops that there are in there. So pulling each line in turn. As I say, it needs practice, this knot. You need to practice to get it right. One little tiny loose bit and it goes wrong. Push these 2 ends together, and then once we're happy with that, start to test it. Got your main line in one hand, you've got your leader in the other hand. Just tighten that off. And then to finish off, what I like to do is I like to do a 3 uni knot on it. So 3 times through uni knot, once, twice, 3 times through there like that. As you say, you'll see all different versions of this on YouTube. People do different ways of doing it. We don't want it to go round the trace knot, is just to go around the main line. There's a final lock off knot, and then we want to cut off. We'll leave about a 1/4 inch initially on the trace knot, and we'll cut off the tag end of this, leaving a little bit left over just to allow for any slippage as we're cinching it down. And then we can trim those little bits off. Now I like to use nail clippers to do that, and I've got some nail clippers somewhere. Oh, here they go. Because I want to trim this leader right off tight, because I don't want any little tag ends sticking out. It's going to catch on rings as they're passing through the rings. Be careful not to trim or nick the actual main line of the braid. Better using braid scissors for cutting braid. And there we have it. Now I like to just finish this off with just a little tiny dab of angler's glue or rig glue. Alright, just to stop any of the loose ends just starting to feed through and unravel on themselves. Cinching it together chemically, shall we say. And there we have it. An FG knot with a slight variation. Incredibly strong knot, say 93% knot strength, and it's the thinnest, finest knot that you'll ever find. Okay, so we've shown you the FG knot. The next knot I want to show you is the Repel loop knot. Now this is the knot that you're going to use to tie your lure to the end of your leader. Now you can use a snap swivel. And there are times when I use snap swivels, particularly if I'm swapping lures around rapidly and I want to be able to do that without any delay. However, remember, you're using a bit of wood or a bit of plastic or a bit of rubber to try and fool a predatory fish into believing it's a fish. So anything that's slightly unnatural about that is going to put the fish off. I've certainly had bass follow my lure all the way up from 100 feet down all the way to the surface and then turn away at the last second. So they're checking out the lure. So they're not likely to see a bait fish with a big chunk of metal sticking out of his nose. So that's why, particularly when the fish are not hard on the bite, you need to be tying this onto your line rather than using a snap swivel. And the knot that's suggested by a lot of lure manufacturers, a lot of line manufacturers, is the Repel loop knot. So I'll show you how to tie that. Okay. Right, the reason that you want to tie a loop knot is that for any type of lure that has an action, you don't want anything that's going to restrict that action. And so for marine flies or for lures, a loop knot is the preferred way of doing that. Okay, now obviously clipping on a link swivel will have a similar sort of effect, but that's an unnecessary piece of metal work which is going to affect the action of the lure and possibly put a fish off. So the loop knot is the way forward. So you can see there. So we'll now show you how to do that. So let's have a look. As you can see, with fluorocarbon, it's very neat. It's very small. It's very hard to see, and so you're not putting the fish off by having a great unnatural swivel sticking out of the end of your bait. You'll notice that my lures at the moment have got the hooks removed. It's because I'm in the process of swapping over to single hooks rather than trebles, because the idea is from now on a lot of my lure fishing is going to be catch and release, so I don't want to harm the fish if I can help it. And those hooks have still got their barbs on them, but we'll be squashing those flat. Right, I'm going to use a heavier line here. This isn't the line I would use, but just to give you some sort of an idea so you can see it a little bit better. First thing you've got to do is you tie a little overhand knot. Give yourself, I don't know, about 6 inches of tag end to work with, and pull that down till it's just neat. You want it tight because you're going to want to be able to thread things through that. You then thread the line through the eye of the lure or the fly or whatever it is that you're attaching here, and put that tag end back through that little loop that we made. Now you want to put it through the same way that it came out. So you can see that this is on this side of the loop, so that wants to go through on this side of the loop. So it goes in the same way as it came out, and it comes out the same way as it went in. And we pull this down, pull this loop all the way down to the eye of the lure or the hook or whatever it is you're attaching here. And then once you get it to that point, we're going to pinch it in that position between finger and thumb, because we don't want this loop too big, so we've got to keep control of that. So pinch that and hold that in place, and then all we're going to do is we're going to do, well, this is 40-pound line, so I'd probably only get away with three loops, 3 or 4 loops, 5 loops on finer line, once round, twice round, 3 times, and then 4th time, and then we're going to put that back through that loop again, going in the way it came out. And then we just take hold of both of those ends of that, and we cinch this knot down until it is on that loop. And cinch that nice and tight, and then pull on the loop, which will take out any little bit of slack that there is there. And so we've got a nice non-slip loop knot. Tidy it up a little bit. Might want to get a little bit of saliva on there just to finish cinching it down. Simple as that, very simple knot. And then we just cut off the tag end, make it neat. We don't want to leave any tag end here, because obviously we don't want it picking up weed, and it's just another thing to pick up weed, which is always the curse of lure fishermen, particularly when you're trolling. So just tie that off. Get the old trusty nail clippers. Being careful not to actually trim the loop or the line. And there we have it. Nice loop knot, which just gives that little bit more freedom for the lure to do what it wants to do when it's in the water. Happy days. When I go lure fishing, there's probably 3 techniques that I use, and I'm looking at a 4th. So the techniques I generally use is when I'm out boat fishing, and this is over deep water, it's drop to the bottom, slow retrieve, so kind of a sink and draw, but slow retrieve, using quite often soft rubber fish, rubber eels, you know, sidewinders, etc. The other method I use, the next method I use, which is good fun, is trolling. So basically you're towing a lure behind the boat, and I've got a couple of boats to do that with. I can either do it on my big boat, or I have got a little inflatable which I'm going to service the engine on, and we're going to use that for trolling. And when I'm doing that, I tend to use a longer rod, so I use an uptight rod or something, just so I'm holding the lure out of the wake. Good fun, good fish, but the sea's got to be absolutely right. You've got to have clear water, no weed in it. If you've got weed in the water, you're just forever picking up weed on the line. The final way, and probably the most exciting way, is casting to fish. I've had a number of rods over time for doing that, but the rods that I'm favouring now is I've got 2 travel rods, break down in 4 sections. Beauty of that is, 1, if I'm going overseas, they get thrown in my luggage, and 2, if I'm out climbing over rocks and what have you, they fold down really tight, go into a backpack and what have you, so they're out of the way, put together very quickly, and they are absolutely outstanding. So I'll have a look at those instead. So my old go-to rod, which I used for many years for bass fishing, is actually a Pike Rod. I think it's a Ryobi Master Pike. It's a fixed ball butt. You could actually buy it with a multiplier butt as well, which is angled. Beautiful action rod. As you can see, it's had a bit of life. I've replaced rings on it because they do get broken, and I would still use this rod. It's a very good rod and beautiful action on it. Nice stiff in the butt and with a nice tippy action on it for flicking lures out. Yeah, so in answer to the question someone asked about could you use freshwater rods for bass fishing, the answer is yes. And trust me, I don't look after my gear, so and this rod has stood the test of time. I've probably been fishing it for 30 years, maybe more, so it's a good rod. Another type of rod that I've used with good effect, and this one isn't taking the test of time so well, is an American style bait caster. It's a shorter rod, got a trigger on it for holding it, so a single hand operation, and this has got a fixed ball bait casting reel on it. Notice it's missing a ring at the moment. I need to replace that, but still it's a good rod and good fun to use. Very good fun, very, you know, you can flick a bait with this very well. Operate for a one-handed operation. What I'm using now, however, and I've been using a lot recently, are these travel rods. So I've got a Sonic travel spin, it's 8 foot, lure weight 10 to 30 grams, which we'll have a look at in a second, and a Savage Gear XLNT3, which we'll have a look at what weights this take. And that's a 20 to 30 gram to 20 to 80 gram lure weight. So nice reel seating on it, beautiful rod. So 20 to 80 gram lure, so it'll chuck a pretty hefty lure. Obviously carbon fibre. These modern short multi-piece rods are beautiful. Back in the day, get a rod like this, it would be very lumpy in its action, but it's a beautiful rod. Very stiff, as you would expect with that weight of lure, with nice standoff rings for using with a fixed ball. So that's the Savage Gear XLNT3. The other rod I have is a lighter rod, which I used a lot this winter overseas, and this is great. So this is a Sonic SK4XTR travel spin, lure weight 10 to 30 grams, much more action to it. Beautiful rod, and I had some quite good fish on this. Yep, so Those are my two go-to spinning rods nowadays. So here we have the trolling motor. If and when we ever get out of this place, out and go fishing again, that's going to be on the back of my little inflatable. We're going to be chugging along Beachy Head, catching us some bass. So first thing we're going to look at is trolling lures, and these are my lures that I use for trolling. You can cast them, but what I found is with these, particularly the multiple hook varieties, you get a lot of hookups on them. I'm gradually going to replace these trebles with single hooks. I'm not going to change them all on one type of lure until I've given the lure a go, because you might find that single hooks will affect the way they perform. Certainly it works on these Repel and mackerel types. We've got three different types there. We've got a very small one, we've got a medium sized one, and then I've got a medium sized floater. So that's quite a shallow runner. These will run a lot deeper, and you can see by the size of the bib on them that they run deeper. This is a Yazori version of these, which works pretty well as well. And then you've got the ever famous sliver, which I always thought was too big. I like a slightly smaller lure, and I was looking around to try and find a sliver-like lure, and I came across these ones, which are made by an American company called Repel, and they have got fantastic action. And I've caught quite a few bass on these, trolling these. As I say, I'm going to swap them over, because this year I'm going to be much more focusing on catch and release. And so I don't want to be damaging the fish with treble hooks. So I mean, in any case, some of these hooks have got to go anyway. But I'm going to swap them over for single hooks, barbless single hooks, and see how they go. So that's trolling lures. Right, so now we're going to look at my lures for fishing in deeper water. You can troll these, you can cast them as well. So they're multi-use, but I use them generally for fishing over wrecks, for bass, pollock and cod. Obviously the bass are the main target, but I've had some really good results with cod, and I've had some lovely pollock, as we'll see in the videos a little bit later on. So let's just work our way through these. So first of all, you've got these shads, these white shads. I've used them. I can't say that I've caught a lot of fish on these, to be truthful. I don't know, maybe it's because I just haven't given them enough of a go. So we'll put that over there to next to them. You then got the natural sidewinders, so Skerry's eels. You've got Skerry's eels and you've got Skerry eel slims. Again, naturals, don't ask me why, but I've not had a lot of result with them. I've got more fish with unnatural looking lures. Next one up in the series, and this is the Fish Lures, which is spelled F-I-I-S-H. It's a French company. Fantastic action. Look at the action on that. The hook, a lot of the action comes from the fact that the hook is on a hinge as well. So beautiful, very soft, and very realistic in the water. And the first time I tried one of those, literally we were coming back, dropped on one wreck as a storm coming in behind us. So we had about time for one drift, straight down, bosh, straight into a bass. So they definitely work. They're very, very good. If there's a downside to them, well, there's two downsides. One, they're bloody expensive. Secondly, they're very soft, so they don't withstand a lot of fish, to be truthful. And when you come to re-rig these, you do need to put a little bit of glue in here just to hold them on there, because they have a tendency of slipping off down the hook, in my experience. From the same company is these Crazy Eels, and again, beautiful, fantastic, very good action, and I've had some nice fish on those. To the mainstay now, and that is these Sidewinders. Now, for some reason, pollock seem to like the rhubarb and custard. I mean, on the day they'll take anything pollock, and it's always a good idea if one of you is fishing with one particular type of lure, everyone else fishes with something different, and then you find the one that they're taking and everybody switches to that lure. And on the day, if they're fishing on small fish, then you need to use a small one. If they're on bigger fish, you need to use a big one, and it's a trial and error thing. Quite often you'll get the fish up, it will cough up a couple of little sprats, and you know to go over to that size of lure. And you have some of these more blues and mackerel stripe lures on their day. They're unbeatable. Red tail. And bass fishing, don't ask me why, they like white lures. And you know, on their day, again, I've caught bass on most colours, but that is the most is the standard, a white lure. Going back into the early days of rubbery fish, or certainly in my experience of early days of rubbery fish, these were unstoppable. Jelly worms with a red tail. I like the black with a red tail. Again, tried all sorts of different colours, but the most consistent catcher was the jelly worm with the black tail. And combine that with a jig head, fantastic lure. So if you can just fix them onto a hook, but I find that they tend to twist around. But if you put them on a jig head, they fish down and up, all right, and it ensures that it's being presented properly. So it's always presenting the right way up. Okay, so it's not twisting around the line, it's fishing really well. So I have got the moulds for making those, and I have made a lot of those lead heads, and in the past caught a lot of fish with them. Don't seem to catch many fish with them, but it's probably because these things have come onto the market which do the job better, and so we use those. But on the day, you know, sometimes if we're not catching it, it's worth to hunt around and try something different. Now, when you're moulding these things, one of the things that you need to realise is it doesn't mould onto a normal hook, it moulds onto a jig hook, which has to have that 90-degree bend in the shank, so that comes out of the lead halfway along like that, so that when it's fishing in the water, it's fishing horizontally in the water. Okay, so those are my go-to lures for fishing over wrecks. These slugs, I've heard people rave about them. Haven't really given them a good go, so I can't really comment. I know that they're good for casting. I can't see how much action they get though, because there's no paddle on the tail and all that. It's just going to pull straight through the water. But you know, I have heard people say good stories about those. The other thing, and I've used them all, haven't got any, is that Sidewinder have been doing some experimenting, and they've come up with some very nice lures. And as I say, they were doing a skerry's eel, but they were doing it in this sparkly thing, and you'll see me catching quite a nice pollock using one of these sparkly Sidewinder lures. So please, Mr. Sidewinder, can I have some more? Right, when I'm fishing a lure like this and I'm fishing deep water, what I tend to do is I tend to have it on a long trace, maybe 12-foot trace, okay, from a boom, and the boom holds that away from your main line as you're dropping it down, because otherwise there's a tendency for it to twist up the line and you're not going to catch anything if that happens. And if you remember, what I like to do is I have these homemade leads which I make from an American mould called a Do It mould. They're too big in the eye to go into a clip, so I use a bit of garden wire just to put that on there, twist that in place, and that holds that in place underneath the boom. Okay, I pre-rig my booms with a bit of monofill going through the boom with a loop knot on one end, a bead and a swivel, so that I haven't got to be messing around, because you know, wreck fishing, you do lose a lot of tackle. You need to be able to get re-rigged and back fishing again quickly, because you might miss that period when the fish are on bite, you know, make 5 or 6 drifts and then they go off the bite, so you need to be fishing for that duration. So I have these made up ready on the boat. I have a dozen of these or so made up ready on the boat, so I can quickly clip one on straight onto my line and back on fishing again if I've lost my rig. Okay. Now, I'm sure that you might have some ideas on how you fish this and how you do this. Please add your ideas in the comments. It's about sharing technique, it's about sharing experiences. We're all learning. I'm learning constantly. Last thing, actually I didn't mention, is these little white shads. Again, this was the go-to bait for a while ago. Fished in combination with a lead head. So the hook's coming out of the back of there, and again, back in this day, I was catching lots of bass on these. Yeah, and I should go back and try those again. Certainly cheaper than buying stuff in, because I can make the leads, and you can pick these white shads up. And in fact, I'm seeing a lot of people on YouTube are now starting to make their own lures. I might have a go at that myself. Get myself a mould. Get myself whatever it is that you make it with, and away we go. So that's the next adventure. Okay, so casting lures. Now, my opinion, the most exciting and frustrating sometimes way of catching fish is to be casting to them. You need to find where the fish are feeding. You need to find what they're feeding on, and then you need to cast a lure that best mimics that at the fish. Remembering they're feeding on live ones, you're chucking them a bit of plastic or a bit of steel, so you've got to give it a bit of life, you've got to make it work. So let's work our way around these. So first of all, I've got these nice big things here. So if you've got bass and they're working a shoal of sprats or mackerel even, then that's the sort of lure you want to be thinking about using. With any multi-hook lure, you have got to be conscious of the fact that you are going to get the few times it's going to land and hook itself on the line and it's not going to work. So that's a price you pay. Now you'll notice that these have all got tribbles on. I will be swapping this over for single hooks in due course. Working our way down, this beautiful lure here, I don't know what it's called. What does it say on top? It's a Tide Minnow Slim. This is a fantastic lure. I have had great success with this lure. I was fishing in the Caribbean with it earlier this year. I was catching barracuda on it. Yeah, fantastic lure, and I've heard some fantastic stories about this down in Cornwall. It's not a particularly deep running lure. It's got a small bib on it, so it's just fishing, I don't know, about a foot down or what have you. So surface feeding fish, or fish that are, you know, sort of mid water, they're going to come up to take that. Again, triple hooks. I'm going to swap that over to singles. This is a French lure. Doesn't look as though it's an easy lure to cast, but actually it's really heavy. So that is going to cast a long way, but it's going to run deep. Now its action comes from the fact that it's got a plastic disc where you'd think that the second hook would be, and that catches the water and makes it swim. So again, a very good lure, works very well, great caster, but it's going to be deep running. I've got a little one somewhere, actually, a really tiny one. So these come in various sizes. So there's a tiny little one there, which again you'd think you're not going to be able to cast that, but that actually wings out because it's actually got some weight to it. It's just a solid piece of metal. So you know, if the fish are feeding on small fish, small fry or a whitebait, then this is the lure to go for. Small hooks, so you know, if you're going for a big fish with a big mouth like a bass, there is going to be a problem that they're going to swallow that down. But you know, you have some good fun with mackerel on that. Same idea. It's got this plastic disc on the back which makes it swivel in the water. Next lure, again, I've had some good results with this, so much so that actually the tail hook has given up the ghost. So I'm going to replace that with a single, and I'll put a single on the belly there. But the lure itself, it has actually got an action. So as that's swimming through the water, the lure itself is flexing. So it's kind of a hard version of a soft lure. Uzuri Arc Minnow. Great lure. Looks like a little tiny herring, doesn't it? Again, not too deep running. It's a floating lure so that you can cast it out. It's going to sit on the surface until you give it some action, and it'll put it on that bib. Going up this side here now, talking about shallow, we're now talking about surface. So we've got some Pachenkos here. Now this is not a particularly heavy lure, so it's actually, you know, you're not going to cast that into wind. It's got a rattle in it, so it makes a noise when it's going through the water. And you fish this walking the dog style. So as it's coming, like it's splashing on the surface, and it's doing that as it goes along the surface. I guess the fish looking up at it, that's what they see. They see that flash, and again on the day, unbeatable. And here's a bigger version of that. It's a Ryobi Yokozuna Pachenko. So it's got this little tiny mouth in it, so that it splashes, it pops as it's going across the surface, and you fish it in a walking the dog style. As opposed to a popper, which what you want to do is it's going to make a pop as it's going across the surface, so you're making it splash, so it's emulating fish that are breaking on the surface. So if you've got bass or mackerel that are have chased the whitebait up onto the surface, and you're getting a lot of splash on the surface, feed one of these across it and you get that splash going, and you will pick up some fish. This is a I guess it's a sand eel imitation. And again, this is for fishing just along the surface. So you're going to splash it along. You're not popping it out, but it will be skipping along the surface. Got a bit of weight to it, so you can cast that well. Talking about weight and casting well, these are something that I'd never come across until this year. Seekers, and these are metal lures. They're heavy, so you got a good cast on them. Lots of flash and bling on them. With this particular model, you get a choice of a single or a treble, so you just take off the one you don't want. But this is what? How many grams is this? This is 360 degrees ISP Seeker. 23 grams. So it's a 23 gram lure. So that is going to go winging out. And here's a slightly heavier one, which is a 28 grams. So they've even got Savage Gear YouTube channel that you can go off and actually watch these being used. I'm going to have a look at that, I think. Yeah, nice bit of kit. Looking forward to using those. Looking at some other metals then, good old fashioned Dexter lure, Dexter wedge rather. It's essentially a piece of pipe that's got lead in it. It's been cut at an angle and then silvered. So they've got a bit of weight to them. So even the little ones have got a bit of weight and will cast quite well. And they go up in sizes until you get the big hefty ones, which have got lots of weight in it. Got a lot of success with those. They're a very good piece of kit. And what I have done also is use these and then put maybe 2 feathers above it. So cut one of these shrimp traces down, just have sort of 1 or 2 above that, so you've got a chance of picking something up on that, and you've also got a chance of picking up something on the feather. And I had a night some years ago when I was fishing this. I had 50 bass doing that, all about this size, but what a sporting night that was. Some were taking the actual lure, some were taking the shrimp. Spinnerbaits. You know, very popular in the States for catching smallmouth bass and widemouth bass, and these work well for bass as well. So you've got the crossover. You've got a soft bait here, which has got a paddle tail on it, and you've got this that's spinning above it, putting a bit of attraction in the water. So you've got this flashing away and putting a lot of vibration into the water, and then the bass or pollock or whatever you're targeting comes up, sees this fish and takes it. Had some good success with those. Not the best casting, but they do work. Let's work on down here. So I've got some small stuff. Now these little tiny plugs, you know, some of them really deep diving. So it's got a big deep diving bib. It's a floating lure, so you can cast it out. It'll float on the surface. You give it a hefty pull. It dives down, and then you feed it. And you can either feed it so it's doing that through the water, or you're keeping it running deep if that's where the fish are feeding. Downside of those, not much weight to them. It's a bit of an effort casting that, especially if you've got a little bit of wind in your face. This bit more weight to this one, and this is again, it's a crossover between a plug with a bib. Oops, this is why I don't like treble hooks, because they tend to get tangled up around each other. So you've got a big bib there for running deep. It's got a bit of weight to it, so I imagine that actually sinks. But it's got a rubber tail as well, so you've got the bib making it go through the water there, and you're getting action in the tail. So again, if that's what they're feeding on, that sort of size bait, then that would be a killer. And I've not had a chance to use this, but I anticipate that'd be quite a good lure on the right day. Different lures, different bibs, different actions. So you've got one with a small shovelly like bib like that. That's not going to run down very deep. That's going to go along just under the surface. This is kind of intermediate. It's a medium-sized bib, and then you've got these big, deep diving bibs. So as you pull into that, it'll go down deep. What else have we got here? Right. Well, we looked at the metals. The classic Toby lure, the go-to bass lure. Yeah, it used to be the lure. Okay, and you can get this. This again? It's not a particularly heavy one, but you can find them slightly thicker than that. So you've got a bit of weight for casting if there's a bit of a breeze. And then finally, we've got this little boy here. I think it's called it has a funny name, Fat Fred or something like that. We'll call it Fat Fred for now. So it's a combination of two. It's a metal lure, but you've also got a spinning blade on there, which is putting vibration and flash into the water. Got a hefty weight to it, so it's going to lob out a long way. And then these last three things here, these are actually squid jigs. Okay, so they haven't got hooks on the back, they've got these array of pins on the back, so when the squid comes along and engulfs that with his tentacles, he gets wrapped up in those pins. And those are for just bopping along on the bottom when the squid are in. And I know that they've been catching a lot of squid last year off New Haven, and I'm sure I know a mark off Seaford where you're going to catch them, which I just haven't had a chance to go and fish. So different types of squid jig. Okay, so there we go, fantastic. Really looking forward to doing some of this. Didn't mention this little boy here. Again, it's an Abu Garcia Atom, just a variation on the Abu Garcia Toby lure. So can't wait to be doing some of this. Can't wait to make some videos up. I know that Jason, the Eastbourne fisherman, he's going to be doing a lot of lure fishing this year. My plan, one of my plans, early season when we can go out again, is get my small inflatable out, steam, troll, going up tide, and then drift back on the tide, bait casting. So that's the plan. Up underneath Seaford Head, Beachy Head, those sort of areas, in nice and close, looking for the bass. Okay, fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed my little video, which is basically an introduction to lure fishing. I am by no means an expert. These are just things that I've used over the years that I've been lure fishing, and there are new things coming online all the time. I'm sure that some of you are looking out thinking, oh, I haven't mentioned this, and oh, I wouldn't do that. Please guys, leave your comments in the comments below. We're all learning from each other. I'm sure that there's nobody out there that knows everything, and we all have things to learn. And what works along my coast might not work along your coast. So please share your ideas, and I look forward to hearing from you. So me and Billy Bob, okay, looking forward to seeing you out on the shore, and I'm looking forward to seeing you out on the boat. Hopefully going to get some kayak fishing done this year, and get some trolling from my little inflatable out on the boat and on the shore, just as soon as the lockdown is over. You know, there is some mention that they might let us go fishing again soon. Don't know if that's going to happen, because I think that would open the floodgates. But yeah, be patient, be safe, be healthy, stay at home. Thank you. Now, if you like this, or if you haven't liked it, leave a comment, leave us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, press the little bell if you want to see any more of my videos, and of course, please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe. It means a lot. Subscriptions is kind of the way we get paid for this, you know. It's the pat on the back, you know, and each day I go and check my YouTube channel and see if I've got any new subscribers, and yeah, it's why I do it. So please feel free to do all of those things, and do leave a comment. Okay, see you later. Oh, and one final thing, just want to give a big shout out to GoPro. Now, you may recall in some of my earlier videos we had a little bit of an aberration in the middle of the screen. It's because my camera fell over on the shingle and chipped the lens. Now, I know I've had GoPros for years, never done that, and all the GoPros I've had in the past, you could replace the lens. GoPro 8 you can't, so basically I was stuck with it. But I got in touch with GoPro, and 6 days it took them to replace it. So it's a big shout out for GoPro. Thank you very much. Barracuda!
I know, Holy Rod.
Never could have been thinking I would know what the future bring. All the highs and lows, said I'm gonna win, though the world might spin. Now I'm sitting here like I'm no one. It rains down on me. All the phone calls I'm ignoring, see, I'm a mess, just trying to guess my way through this. Just don't get enough of me. Just don't get enough of me. got a policy, didn't bring me luck, just the honesty. Now it's all on me, if I'm gonna win. Oh, I'm just gonna get up. It rains down on me, all the phone calls I'm ignoring, see. I'm a mess, just trying to guess my way through this. Just don't get enough of me. 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 Wanna go back in time when everything seems so clear, and when the problems we carried weren't even problems at all. Just don't get enough of me. Weren't even problems at all. Just don't get enough of me. Weren't even problems at all. Just don't get enough of me. Weren't even problems at all. Just don't get enough of me. Weren't even problems at all. Just don't get enough of me. Never could have been thinking I would know what the future bring. All the highs and lows. Said I'm gonna win, though the world might spin. Now I'm sitting here like I'm no one. It rains down on me, all the phone calls I'm ignoring, see. I'm a mess, just trying to guess my way through this. Just don't get enough of me.